Hey, what's up, guys? Today we are working on a 2013 Volkswagen GTI. This has a 2-liter turbo engine in it, GTI. Customer complaint. Customer said that the initial startup, there will be an extended crank, but it will start up on the second attempt, and after that it runs fine. It's only the initial startup, so I've let this vehicle sit a while. In hopes to maybe catch this extended crank, so I'm just going to crank it over real quick. So a bit of an extended crank. So after that, it starts right up. What I want to do, I want to put a scan tool on it, see if there's any trouble codes, and possibly install a fuel gauge, maybe look for a potential bleed down issue. That is where my thoughts are. So no codes present. I can bring up some data PIDs, maybe check out our rail pressure. Alright, so on the left side is our specified. On the right side would be our rail pressure. Let's see if I can get it. Extended crank, maybe. Nope. Started right up. So our specified 40, rail pressure's at 40. What I want to do, I'm going to put a fuel gauge on the low side of this system and see what our low side is running at. Alright, so I have a fuel pressure gauge installed on the low side. And we are running at about 2.5 to 3 bar. That seems kind of low. Typically these systems on the low side will run at maybe 4 to 5. So I'm just going to keep you focused on this, and I'm going to shut the car off and we're just going to watch this pressure. So I'm going to keep you focused on this. I'm going to shut the car off and we will just watch this pressure, and I'm going to cycle it on maybe a few times and we'll just keep an eye on the gauge and see what happens. So that initial jump right there should have been our key on. It should jump to maybe about 5 bar and then not go below 3. I'm going to prime it again. It's hard for me to see over here. I'm going to, keys off right now, I'm going to prime it. So what are we getting to? Maybe just about 3. That is low for this. We should generally be, I'm thinking, around 5 bar, and then it should drop to 3 and not go below 3. So it looks like we may have a bleed down issue. So what we can do to eliminate, injectors, retention valves, regulators, there is a shutoff valve right here on the pump. So what I can do is maybe prime it and then shut this off, and if pressure holds, that pressure is now going to be on this side of the gauge, which goes to my fuel injectors. If pressure holds, then that tells us our injectors are good and we need to focus that way, which would be There's a regulator valve in the fuel filter, and I think there's a retention valve in the low side pump. So let me fix this gauge. So I'm gonna prime this key, and then I'm gonna prime this key, and then hurry up and shut this valve. That right there might have just, I don't know if you've seen the gauge just drop right there. I had the valve closed and I just opened it and it dropped again, so that might be a sign right there. I'm gonna do another prime, turn that on, hit about 3 bar, shut the valve off. You can see it's now holding. That tells us on this side of the gauge it goes to the injectors. On the back side it's coming from the pump. So I'm just gonna open this valve. If it bleeds off, then we need to go that way, which would be towards our fuel filter and towards our fuel pump, low side fuel pump. So I'm gonna open this valve. Big drop off. So we are going towards the fuel filter, towards the fuel pump. So the fuel pump lives underneath the back seat. This is the passenger side. This is where the transfer pump lives down here. There is a fuel pump module. Nothing crazy. What I want to do is put an extension hose in here and just give myself something to pinch off, because these are hard plastic lines and I need to be able to pinch different sides of the system off. Back here, I'll show you, there is a supply line that goes to the fuel filter and a return line off of the fuel filter, because there's a pressure relief valve or a regulator valve that is built into the fuel filter. I have seen those cause issues, but to make sure and eliminate that, I have a hose that I'm gonna install so that we can just have something to pinch off different sides of the system. That's all. Okay, so I just, instead of using the extension hose I had, I just relocated my gauge, and the gauge has rubber lines on it, so I'll be able to use the valve to shut off one side, or maybe some hose clamp pliers or some clamping pliers, whichever I prefer. I guess it doesn't really matter. The point is, I can use the gauge, so I'll be able to get everything in the shot that I'm doing. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, got my gauge back here. I'm going to use this little hose right here. I want to be able to pinch off on my return side. The return side is only from the back side of the fuel filter going to the pump, and it's just a pressure relief valve. I guess if pressure gets too high, it could dump back into the tank, or I guess whenever you shut the car off, it dumps back into the tank. Not entirely sure about that, but I know that it is a pressure relief valve, so if pressure would go too high, it would dump back into the tank. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my gauge on the supply line going up to the rail, or the high pressure pump in this case, and just pinch off different sides. Get this. There's a lot of different hoses going on right here. Okay. Be careful with that. All right. This hose right here is on the return side from my fuel filter. So the first test I'm going to do, I'm going to turn the key on, we're going to get some pressure, and then I will pinch off this line. If pressure holds, then our bleed down is in the fuel filter and we need a fuel filter. And if it doesn't hold, then I'm going to go on the actual gauge from the pump and pinch it off right here and see if pressure holds. And if pressure holds then we have a faulty retention valve in the fuel pump and we will need a low side fuel pump. So that's a test I'm gonna do. I need to get my pliers. All right, so I'm gonna prime the key, get some pressure. We got about 3 bar there. I'll pinch off the return side. Still losing pressure. So that tells me that our loss is not through the fuel filter and that regulator valve is good. Give it a few more primes. Pinch off my pump side. So I'm now pinching off the pump side, and what it looks like is we have a faulty retention valve in this pump. So what we should have when we turn this key on is roughly around 5 bar, and then if it drops off, it shouldn't drop below 3. I'm going to let this go. Instantly dropping off. Prime the key again. See how high I can get it to prime. Hold it. So it looks like we need a low side fuel pump. That's me, I was losing my grip there. Need a low side fuel pump. We have a faulty pressure retention valve inside this in-tank fuel pump. And honestly, with this thing running, that pressure's pretty low. Let it go, holding it. Faulty retention valve in the low side pump. Alright guys, so I got the new fuel pump installed. This is our running pressure right now. We're at about we're at about 5 bar, which is roughly around, I don't know, 70 to 80 psi. I think before we were at around 2.5 to 3, which is only around 40 psi. So our running pressure or bar is significantly higher, but I just wanted to get you an after shot. I'm going to shut the key off. We can just watch this pressure. Not even budging. Before, our pressure bleed off was immediate. So just wanted to confirm this fix with you guys. Faulty check valve or pressure retention valve, whatever you want to call it, inside the in-tank fuel pump. So I hope you guys enjoy this video, and thanks for watching.